which will be moderated by Solène Barfi. Solène Barfi is a sustainable mobility expert from Mobilize Your City and Kodatu. And she will moderate a panel on governing crisis in urban transport. So please, Solène, the stage is yours.
Let's give a round of applause to Solène.
Which mic should I? This one. Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Thank you everyone for being here this morning. I'm super pleased to be with all of you to touch on this sensitive topic that is crisis management related to urban mobility governance. As many of you might have experienced recently, we are facing more and more crises related to urban mobility. These crises are often multiple. We talk about economic crisis, for instance, related to fuel price increase, to inflation. We talk about social crisis. We experienced, for instance, a few years ago, the Gilets jaunes movement in France. At the same time in Chile, I think there were some major demonstrations as well occurring due to the public transport fare increases. We're talking also about public health issues in this context relating to air pollution, to road fatalities, for instance. We're talking about also cyber attacks, about terrorist attacks relating to safety issues, etc. So those crises are multiple, they tend to be more and more frequent, and this recalls several considerations. First, that urban mobility is becoming a central element of our cities and territories. We need to move, we're moving more and more, and most of the time we're depending more and more on motorized transport to do so. And another aspect is our also increased reliance on some resources, among them petrol, of course. So we will try this morning to tackle some of these examples of crises in several cities across the globe, trying to understand the diversity of these crises, when do they occur, and what type of mechanism can be put in place to prepare for them, to avoid them, and to mitigate their effect on the population. To do so, I'm glad to welcome several panelists coming from various horizons. First, Andreas Zunchen from the Netherlands, who's working for UITP. Then Denislav Tisyukevich, who's head of CiviNet in Ukraine. Mrs. Paula Tapia, who's director of the Metropolitan Public Transport Directorate of Santiago in Chile. Mr. Aremu, who's working for the Lagos State in Nigeria. And Giancarlo Moreira Gama, who's the founder of JV Cities in Brazil. So with this very rich panel, I will suggest that we give them, each of them, 5 minutes to present us a specific type of crisis that they had to face in their experience in their cities. And then we will try to unpack some of the issues related to crisis management and how to mitigate them through a round of transversal questions. So if it's fine with you, I'd like to start with maybe what could be kind of a wake-up call that Giancarlo would like to address us.
Can I use that?
Of course.
Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. I would like to put the presentation just to start. Yeah, it's a huge honor to be here today to talking to you all. I'm Giancarlo, I'm from Brazil, and in this wake-up call, I would like to invite all of us to think about for whom are we talking about climate adaptation. The climate crisis is not new. Everyone here is already aware of the immense challenges communities are facing, especially in the Global South and among marginalized groups. But if we know what is happening, if so much knowledge has already been produced, and so many negotiations have already taken place, why haven't we moved forward as we should? What is missing from this global effort to make climate action truly effective? All the photos that I'm going to show here are from small and medium-sized cities impacted by climate change in Brazil and around the world. I made those questions, but I won't pretend to have an answer. I believe we all are here to search for possible answers together, but I do have some hypotheses. As I said, my name is Giancarlo. I am 24 years old. I am a gay, black, Latin American man from Brazil. I am a climate justice activist, a former city councilor elected in my city, a political scientist, a master in public policy from the University of Oxford. But none of those titles have taught me more than my own lived experience. I grew up in a periphery of a small town in São Paulo. Since I was born, I have lived with both climate change and deep social inequality. Extreme weather is getting worse, but poverty has shaped daily life in Brazil for generations. Climate change magnifies that crisis. The disruption for those people that my friend talked earlier today is already happening every day in Brazil. That's why I chose to act. I became an activist with 16. At 20, I was elected as the youngest city councilor in my town and the first openly LGBTQ person ever elected there. One of the 9 representatives of 50,000 inhabitants. I fought every day against inequality and climate injustice. My focus was on building sustainable urban policies for marginalized communities. Because you can't tackle inequality or climate crisis without asking how and for whom our cities are designed. Through this work, we passed over 20 public policies, real change in my city. And yet, something was missing. That something was scale. Many leaders still describe climate events as natural disaster in Brazil. National plans and international efforts overwhelmingly focus on big cities, which make up just 2% of all Brazilian municipalities. Meanwhile, more than 90 million people are nearly ignored when it comes to climate effects. Who are our NDCs really for? Brazil has about 5,000 municipalities. 90 of them have fewer than 100,000 people. Cities like mine. Cities are still built for the wealth and mostly white people. People who, unsurprisingly, don't die when climate disasters strike. Today, only 6% of Brazilian cities are prepared for the climate impacts. If smaller cities and communities are the most vulnerable, why are we not looking at them? My hypothesis is that we are looking in the wrong place. Local action has extraordinary power. In Brazil and across the world, climate action remains top-down. National governments create vague policies that rarely reach local realities. There is no local capacity building, no financing, no political support. Until we address climate federalism and build real local governance, those who emit the least will keep suffering the most. For whom are we writing these reports? City-level action is urgent. That's why I founded, and I am currently the executive director of GV Cities. GV means return to the beginning, in Tupi-Guarani, an indigenous Brazilian language. Our mission is to rebuild climate governance from the local level, treating cities as the main actor. We are a think and do think. We are a think and do think, helping small and medium-sized cities implement sustainable, just-driven urban policy. We work through advocacy, policy research, strategic communication, and leadership training, influencing and helping city halls focused on small and medium-sized territories. We have already worked in over 8 cities in Brazil, influencing decisions that impact more than 18 million people every day. We have engaged politicians from 18 parties, from the left to the right, and 17 states. Our policy briefs have reached over 5 million online, and our digital activism has reached over 10 million people. We are reshaping the climate justice narrative, starting with cities. Among the key policies we advocate for, the policies that we advocate for are mitigation and adaptation, strategies centered on vulnerable populations, walkable cities, and as a core pillar, fare-free public transportation, so that mobility is treated as a right. Building resilient transportation system, as our panel is going to discuss, it starts by ensuring everyone can access the city. Javier and I are committed to making public transportation a right, not a commodity. Today, over 132 cities in Brazil already have fare-free public transportation, a reference in the world, fulfilling our constitutional right to mobility. We have normalized a transportation system where only those who can afford can move freely. Fare-free transit has changed that. It empowers, as my Indian friend mentioned, families economically. It strengthens local economies, reduces emissions, and open access to greener jobs. It's also replaced the unstable fare-free based funding module. Fare does not pay the bill of public transportation. A resilient system needs robust public funding. As long as passengers are the key to subsidize this system, true resilience is not possible. Talking about fare-free transport is talking about climate adaptation. But more than that, fare-free public transport is about climate justice. It gives access to job, income, and the city, especially for the poorest and the most marginalized. In Brazil, fare-free means give access for those that had never accessed the city, who suffer the most when disaster hits. If we want governance that works for those most impacted by the climate crisis, we must start with cities. We must put communities first, and we must ask, for whom are we building action? I hope this panel today and this conference help us to shift our focus to those who are not at the decision-making table, but who are always the first to pay the price when the climate crisis strikes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giancarlo, for this essential stand. That recalls also the necessity to really link crisis management to just transition, and to also keep in mind that inclusive mobility is the horizon. I'd like to maybe start touching on this topic regarding the training and the capacity of the people who are in charge of the crisis management. And for that, I'd like to ask Andreas Zönchen from UITP to maybe share with us some insight, because you're highly involved with the training of people regarding crisis management. So how do you do that? How can you prepare people to deal with crisis? And maybe what are the main key takeaways of some of the training that you share with them?
Yes, thank you very much, Solène. Indeed, it's a point I'm happy to make here, because so far we have focused very much in the morning on trying to avoid crisis. And this is very important, and we should never stop this, but we should never give in to the illusion that we will actually manage. Things will go wrong. They definitely will, and that's the moment when we also have to be prepared for it. And this is where I think governance comes in. I mean, I'm representing UITP here, so I'm thinking as a transport authority, I'm thinking as a transport operator. And what is very important, I think, to acknowledge for transport operators and crisis situations, whatever it is, we have a certain responsibility and we have a certain capacity, but we can't manage it on our own. So this is actually where we need partners. This is where we need collaboration. That's where we need other sectors. And this kind of institutional cooperation actually has to come in several ways. So of course, in general, it's very important because we have to make sure that any crisis response is effective, is fast. We have been talking about finances also. I mean, it's really important to get out of whatever problem we are sitting in as fast as possible and give people their mobility option back of public transport. So this cooperation, this institutional cooperation, we can see this as horizontal partnerships, where we talk about collaboration between cities, between regions, between operators. I mean, everybody who is kind of involved in the same mobility system in a region or a country. But we also have to think in a vertical institutional collaboration, because transport operators, depending on their area of business, they may be local, they may be regional, they may be national, but any kind of incident, any kind of crisis doesn't care for these boundaries. So we also have to think up and down, and there are certain rights, responsibilities, and kind of leverage that you don't have at the local level. And we heard this already very often. So this is something where we definitely need to make the connection between different levels. And we also have to think about collaboration across business sectors. Because of course transport is one business sector, but we need to have partnerships with the health sector, with the emergency responses, with the, I mean, we had the examples of the waste management of a city. So, I mean, all these systems are actually interconnected. So we have to make sure a governance is put in place that helps us to prevent incidents, but is also there for us in order to manage incidents and crises. And what we actually focus very much in our capacity building measures is to really understand these different phases of cooperation that are needed and these different aspects of partnership. And if I think about very classic, I would say, crisis circle, then of course we always have to think about the prevention, preparedness, response, and then the recovery of an incident, hopefully learning from the mistakes we have made and being better prepared next time. And when I think in this circle, then cooperation comes in very different forms. If I think about the prevention of any kind of incident, we have to think, for instance, about risk mapping, about common situational pictures, about early warning systems. Unfortunately, we still see it too often that there is information about something that's coming up. Some incidents are unfortunately still unpredictable, take earthquakes or something. But if I see, for instance, extreme weather situations, or if I start to see social unrest situations, there is a reception somewhere. And rather than filing that away as confidential, need to know, we have to develop systems where this is actually shared with partners that will ultimately suffer the consequences. And if you have a little bit more time to evacuate, to prepare, take the example from India, the flooded depots. If you have a chance, if you get an hour more warning, you have a chance to evacuate your vehicle and your staff from that place, and you can still use them. Once your territory is flooded, nothing you can do. So this is very important in the prevention phase. If I think about the preparedness, something that is very important for us is, for instance, to make the point of joint trainings and joint exercises between the different partners, because crisis response is only as good as the partners collaborate with each other. And I'm picking up a lot of keywords from this morning. We had also the keyword of silos. And unfortunately, that's what you see. I mean, in any kind of business area or government area, you have these silos. And very often partners that have to rely on each other and support each other don't actually have an idea about what is the capacity and the role of the other ones. You know, what are the evacuation routes? And unfortunately, for instance, we see it in public transport that an operator is designing evacuation routes that the firefighters have access routes. It's not a good idea. And it's actually quite easy to avoid if you have the right governance in place for this. So then for preparedness, we also had already the keywords of redundancies and backups. So making sure that you have these flexible networks, that energy grids can help you from somewhere else, that you have alternative places to park your buses, all these kind of things. I mean, having redundant systems definitely helps in a crisis situation. And then in crisis management, we actually see good practices all around the world where organizations, including public transport operators, have, for instance, joint command centers. We see that in Paris. We also see that, for instance, I think in Tokyo, where they are more for earthquake preparedness. So you have these joint command centers where actually all the partners are in one place, and that's much easier to coordinate. joint communication, that's also important. I mean, people need to know, especially in public transport, it's not just about, you know, the level of the water or whatever it is. People simply need to know how to get home, what is available and what is actually disrupted by the crisis. People need to know that, and it has to be accurate information. So this is something important. And finally, when it comes to the recovery of the crisis, again, cooperation is important so that we don't suffer this institutional amnesia. You know, we are out of it and it's forgotten. No, we're just out of it. But it may come back, or something else may come back. And especially this moment is very important to review how have things been handled, what did work, what did not work, how can we do better, and how can we involve the right partners. So actually, that's perhaps the good thing of a job in crisis management and security. You're never done, if that's something good. But it is. So yeah, I think this is very important. The focus of avoiding things and preventing things is extremely important, but we should never ever believe we will succeed every time. We won't.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And I think this is a very important aspect that Denislava might also jump on to also deep dive into the crisis that you cannot avoid. I think this is also what you have been facing in Ukraine for the past years. This is one of the most terrible and difficult and delicate situations to deal with. Could you maybe tell us a bit about the experience that you faced in Lviv, for instance, more specifically, where there was a massive influx of population when the war broke, and maybe also going back to the past years, if you would have anything looking back at what happened that would have been useful for you to know 3 years ago when it all started, to better prepare if it's in any way possible?
Thank you for the presentation. I will actually take a clicker if possible. The thing is, you can never be prepared for war, and you must understand that, even though all the media around the world told us in advance that the war might happen. We never believed it, we never wanted to believe it, and then it happened. And the moment it happens, you totally cannot understand what to do. And the thing is, not just a normal person cannot predict and understand what the next steps should be. Every single department, institution, ministry, every single person you know, your friends and family, all of them, they totally don't know what to do. And you need to start thinking, but you can't, because in the moment when the war starts, you're just stuck in some thoughts, you're stuck in your mind, you're thinking about the nearest minutes, whether you're gonna be alive, whether your friends and family are gonna be alive, whether the country will survive, do I need to move, or I just need to stay, or do I need to pack my things, or maybe I need to take my car and fuel it, or maybe I just need to go and cross the border and move from the country. And the thing is, you never can be prepared for that. I am trying to do something, but it's not moving. Okay, it doesn't matter. And I would fully agree with the previous comments that. Oh, good. So I would fully agree with the previous comments that interoperability, substitutes, connectivity. This is extremely important in every single stage of any crisis. If you at least try to think in advance and prepare yourself about a possible worse outcomes, some solutions might come to you. And to understand more the solutions that Ukraine came up with, I need to talk more about the current context that we have right now. This is the map of Ukraine, and the zones in the red are the territories where we have temporary occupation or by Russian Federation. And you must understand that Ukraine is still the biggest country in the European Union, bigger than Germany and France. And these zones are not the only one affected by war. Missiles can hit anywhere in the world within minutes. So being in Lviv or Kiev or Odessa or Kherson, anywhere there, you can still be a target. So because of that, we have 100% closed airports and airspace in Ukraine besides military operation. We have 80% of air infrastructure at least partially destroyed or fully destroyed. We have limited port access. Only, I would say, partial ports work right now. We have partially destroyed railway system, especially on the east, or it's not connected anymore. It's outdated mobility infrastructure, not just because it was outdated, it gets outdated because you don't have access to it or you don't have resources to renew it. And it's also a new context that we didn't really know can happen in Europe. It's decrease in cities. You rapidly get a size of 100,000, 1 million city size inhabitants, or even 20,000 city size, getting less than half or even more. And in the end, you are left with the big and huge infrastructure that used all of your resources with no people and inhabitants living in the city or a town. So I would divide the crisis that happened in Ukraine actually in 4 stages. The first crisis that happened is the rapid inflow of internally displaced people and transit citizens. I was personally located in the city of Lviv at the day the war started, the full-scale invasion started, and my city had to help internally displaced people to pass through the gates from Ukraine to Poland or from Ukraine to Hungary within basically 2 weeks. We passed 5 million Ukrainians, and in total we helped more than 7 million Ukrainians to escape the war. My city is just the size of 900,000 inhabitants. Imagine 3 million people just literally casually driving to Lviv in a few hours, just after you are stuck in your mind with the thought the war had just begun. This was the situation. The trains were packed, the stations were packed, the parking lots were literally not even parking lots anymore. The streets were parking lots. Every single corner of the city became a parking lot. Every single corner of the city became inhabited with internally displaced people who literally didn't know where to go, where is the train station, how to go outside, what to do, where is the help, can I get a cat outside, do I need my passport because I lost it, how do I cross the border? And this was the first crisis that we met. After that, actually, the second crisis happened. The fuel just disappeared. All of that were simultaneous things. So we had the whole of my city flooded with internally displaced people, but not just Lviv city. All of the west side of Ukraine was in the same situation. The second thought of a person who owns a car after the war starts is that I need to fuel a car in my tank because maybe I need my fuel, maybe tomorrow there will be no fuel. And this is exactly what happened. We got a rapid fuel increase, I would say twice within a week. And the second thing happened within this week, we also had a disrupted connection for the fuel connection, so we didn't really have fuel on the stations, and we needed still to provide some public transportation for the people because we really needed to provide services. In this situation, hopefully and luckily, we had really good partners from the European Union who helped us with the humanitarian aid at the first weeks, but also in some lucky coincidence, we also had some reserves in Ukraine that is actually, again, about thinking ahead. And that helped us to stay on float for a few weeks at the beginning. There was a third crisis that happened a few weeks after the start of full-scale invasion. This is just the evening in my city. There is no light, literally. You have to pass somehow and live your life somehow with no light. There was just a lonely bus passing. This is the only source of light that you have in kilometers. This is exactly the same story that happens all the time still in Ukraine, and that happened really in a terrible way, especially in the first 2 years of war, a full-scale invasion. And we also had to deal with that. The funny thing is, before, at the previous slide, we had a challenge of providing fuel for the public transportation. Now, the challenge is totally different. When we didn't have a fuel, we had electricity, so we substituted public transportation on the fuel with the electric public transportation. After that, you're stuck with the different situation. Now you don't have electricity and you need to provide public transportation on the fuel. Luckily, we managed to substitute both of the situations. And there is a fourth stage of crisis. It's safety and security in different and various ways. Safety is not just personal safety or safety that you're not hit by something. Safety is also the thing that your phone is not hacked, the system around is not hacked, you still can access internet, you still have the possibility to use the public services, you still have the possibility to use simple routine things in your daily life. And this is also connected to the public transportation strongly, because we had affected our system several times through the full-scale invasion that's still ongoing. For example, there was a huge hack last year with our phone operator in Ukraine that provided ticketing services for the e-ticketing companies in Ukraine. And that is exactly the story of Lviv. At the moment, we already had the IDP transit crisis more or less regulated. So there was no influx of millions of people every single day. We almost had the inhabitant size sorted. It was the same size that used to be pre-war. And then Russia attacks all the transportation and phone operator system in Ukraine. And you cannot use your e-ticket. And this is exactly the moment where you don't get the resources funding back to the city, so you cannot fund the public transportation. However, because of this interoperability, interconnectivity, and backups, again, backups, we believe in them, we love them, they save us. Because of that, we could operate our public transportation with e-ticketing not even working, but people still used kind of the NFC reader. And because of the backup, after 3 days, when we dealt with the disruption, we had all of the data stored, and we still knew how many passengers used the public transportation, what was the timing, the delays, etc., etc. And it really helped us, because from the moment when for example, the city of Lviv installed e-ticketing system that actually just happened a year ago, so during the full-scale invasion, we had an increase of 300% in the budgeting from the people who actually used the e-ticketing. I will not go past to how we used that and what was the solutions, but I do really need to say that thinking ahead will help you a lot in going through various crises. Even a simple solution and advice from the government a week before the war, just to pack your passport and like first supplies, was really good. Now we know that besides that, you need to have interoperability of your energy grid with the countries around you. Now we know that probably, most likely, you need some kind of battery stored in your house just in case. Now we know that people who work in the electricity sector, they're like the gods in the area where you're affected with war, because they are able to manage the disruption just in 6 to 8 hours. This is crazy timing. especially when you understand the amount of people that you need to serve. But yeah, I will go more later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denislava. Indeed, I mean, there are so many. Thank you. There are so many learnings, and we could probably keep on listening to you for hours here. I'd like to maybe touch on other type of crisis, because unfortunately there are so many different types of crisis, but also maybe with Mr. Aremu, who's coming from Nigeria and who works for the state of Lagos in charge of transportation. As you might explain to us, Lagos has been also facing different types of situation and of crisis over the past years, may trigger, for instance, the shock and the volatility of the fuel, also floodings, also lack of currency, preventing people from using public transport and especially the paratransit services. So, yeah, considering all these different type of crises happening, how do you, as the state of Lagos, face those situations, especially because you sit between the federal government and the different authorities in charge of urban mobility within the state of Lagos? So, yeah, maybe could you quickly unpack a bit those different types of crises and what is your role addressing it and coordinating with other actors?
Thank you. As governments, firstly, I am from a country of over 220 million people. And the state where I serve as Senior Special Assistant to the Governor on Transportation is over 22 million people. And is the commercial hub of Africa, not only Nigeria. Lagos is a city, we call it a commercial city, and is the largest, second largest economy in Africa. Second largest city economy in Africa. That's to tell you that crisis, we can't do without crisis. Because virtually every day, people are tripping in to Lagos just to come because there are huge potential and prospects in Lagos. So, as a state, we have faced several crises. I will start from COVID-19. COVID-19 era was so bad. It's a bad experience as a government, you know, because we experience it because we do not expect it. But, you know, in a country like Africa, you know, we do not expect such incidents. But it came suddenly, and as a government, well-prepared government, we tackle it. And Lagos State, we deploy all our best team to make sure that this COVID-19 does not spread. And truly, Lagos State conquered COVID-19 earlier than most of the city in Africa, and even I can say in the world. We face a lot of crises, and it has direct impact on our public transportation. Because during the era, a lot of people, they refuse to put their vehicle on the road, on our road. They rather park it. You know, there is a lot of people could not move freely. There's the issue of the public transport scarcity. And as a government, we need to deploy a lot of buses to make sure that, and we put the necessary measure in place to make sure that people continue in their day-to-day activity. And because after then, we encounter another crisis, which happened to do away. We call it NSAS. NSAS, where a lot of public transport were raised. Public infrastructure were raised as well, to the extent that there is no vehicle, there is no public transportation. It's only few, let's say out of 100%, out of 100 buses, it's only 5 that is available. All others have been raised, owned by government. Government has spent a lot of millions of dollars just to bring those buses and to deploy it to all our cities, all our community in Lagos. But it came suddenly as a shock to the government. All were raised. It's only few that these people could not have access to, because you can make research after this conference. You can make your research. You see that it's a bad experience to us as a government, where we lost almost everything, and it took government intervention and determination to bring more buses from outside the country to make sure that the issue of transportation gets solved. But I can tell you it's one of the baddest experience that we experience as a government. Another one is flooding. As governments, because Lagos State's landmass, it is 40% water waste, while the remaining is 60. So Lagos State have more potentials when it comes to prospect on water, and our waterways have been underutilized. So because of this, and because of our drainage blockage, we are talking about the earlier panelists talk about the waste management. So we also have the same experience in Lagos, because a city that is densely populated, there is no way you not have such crisis. So when it is raining season, you see people begin all their waste, they begin to pour it, on the drainage, just because they thought everything is the responsibility of the government. And as the government, the crisis has come, you need to find a way, the solution to it. And there is issue of traffic. Almost every part of the city, the flooding everywhere. Once it is raining season, we have such crisis. And this has been an issue to us as government. So what have we been put in place? We make sure that we are expanding our existing drainage. Yes, we build new ones. We make sure that there's a ban on the government now focus much on renewable energy. So we don't need to throw away your waste. We can buy it back as the government, and as we have some agency that are in charge of it. So instead of you throwing them away, bring them back, we buy it, just to do what? To encourage a neater environment and to reduce such flooding in our city. We have done a lot when it comes to the issue of, we are building more roads just to solve all this crisis. There is an ongoing project. We call it Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road, which is the biggest. It will be the biggest in Africa and the longest one. This is just to solve the issue of this crisis, because whenever our road is congested, it brings more, it doesn't allow people to get to their work at the right time. So what we are doing is to discongest the existing road and making sure that we reduce the travel time of our people so that people can be more productive. Because in such a city like ours, where there's economic activities going on and it has a potential economic growth, we must make sure that the people go to their work, do their daily activities without wasting their time on our road. You can be more productive when there is no congestion on our road. So other thing we are trying to diversify, because we have more potentials on our waterways. And the government has just touched probably 18% of our waterways. So there is a lot of huge potential and prospects on our waterways. So we are built as a government, we have built over 30 jetty terminals, and we are still building new ones so that we can decongest the road and we can move people can move on the water, and it is more safer and more reliable. So on the issue of, we are trying to just do on the issue of train, we have done a lot on that. We have blue line rail, we have red line. There's one that is coming up, which is green and purple line. We want to make sure that we are connecting the community. We are connecting the community together, and people are more productive, because our target is to become the number one economic growth city, which is in the whole Africa. And that's our target, and I can tell you together we can build a resilient transportation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Aremu. I think we understand well the issue of intermodality, connectivity, and also the connection between the different levels of government. I would like to address this topic during our last intervention with Mrs. Paula Tapia from the Urban Mobility Directorate from Santiago. You've been acting as a former Minister of Transport, in charge of this directorate. How do you, on a daily basis, ensure the coordination between the different levels of government when it relates to crisis management?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks to me for this invitation. For me, it's very special because maybe I don't remember, but 8 years ago in Leipzig, I created with my partners the new group is Women in Motion. It's very important for me, for my different leadership in different countries. Is a good experience, and today is special for this reason. Okay, in Santiago, today, Santiago is the capital of Chile in South America. Maybe you know Chile? No? I think it's okay, Martin. It's a special public transport today in Chile. It's my first point, maybe, because during this administration, we work about 2 pillars, electromobility and gender equality. It's very important for us, connected with the different points about the crisis, maybe. And for this reason, a few weeks ago, we published the report, the special report about the gender equality and the electromobility. I visit the website. You read about the especially important the electromobility maybe in the climate change. in relation this, as a result, in 2023, we were able to measure for the first time the effects than the electromobility in this report. For example, in Santiago today, we have electroterminals have 44% less emissions that regular terminals. Noise pollutions has been reduced by 44% in street where electric buses circulate, and public transport buses today only represent around 3% of ground transport emissions in Santiago. Santiago has had its lowest level of pollution in 25 years. It has become a leader in innovation for a green transport system. And about the question, our institutions is responsible for leading and coordinate the operation on the integrated public transport system of Santiago. This system, known as Red Movilidad, is one of the most modern, complex, and ambitious network in Latin America, with the capacity to serve more than 7 million people every day. Red Movilidad is built on 3 main pillars: metro, electric buses maybe, and the rail line. Following this disruption, for example, COVID, we have recovered a large part of our demand and are currently enable around 5 million transactions daily. But behind this massive operation lies something ever more fundamental: a robust and well-coordinated governance structures. With now on this will be possibly including an achievement, electromobility, and participation of women drivers. Today, we have around 2,000 women drivers. It's an important point because the woman is different men when drivers the public transport. I recommend, and especially for the participation women, is a special program. We created the new program for the incorporating more women in this area. For us, government is far more than administrative oversight. It is the framework that establishes clear rules, enable coordinating among diverse public and private actors, ensures transparency, and most important, allow public policy to respond effectively to the real mobility challenges of the city. This maybe for this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tapia. I think we're running a bit out of time, slightly, and that everyone is starting to be hungry. So I would suggest that we skip the panel discussion, because we will also have more opportunities to dive into this topic this afternoon during the technical session that is dedicated to crisis management. I think our panelists did a great job exemplifying what do we talk about when we mention crisis management, who are the stakeholders involved, what are the multiple aspects of crisis that we can face, and how we can somehow try to anticipate for it, mitigate, also keeping in mind that, first of all, most of the time we cannot really prepare and avoid those crises, and also that it shouldn't distract us also from the objectives of the longer term, the longer perspective. I think you did a great job at recalling that as well, Mrs. Tapia, that we still have more crises because there is a need to engage into transition, a just transition, environmental transition, and that also is an emergency that should be tackled at the same time. Thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you to the TUMI team for organizing this session and event. Also, if you would like to have more information on this topic and on some of the examples that are being shown, there is a newly released publication from TUMI, Crisis Management in the Urban Transport Sector. I think there are even some printed version available at the back of the room, if you're curious. And there is also a Mobilize Your City publication that has just been released. You can download it through the QR code here. So it's integrating climate adaptation into sustainable mobility plans and guidelines, 9 guidelines to better engage with it regarding the built environment and urban mobility. So feel free to look at this publication. Thank you again, everyone, for your participation and looking forward to the rest of the discussions.